All right, I guess I'm live. Hello everyone. Uh, who's watching? Let me know. Today I'm having a solo live stream for the first time, and one thing we actually did kind of a rebranding, but it's not still reflected in our design. You can see in the corners it says Angular Space Meetup, but we kind of renamed the whole thing into Angular Space TV because the initial idea was that we would always meet people here, but today you're only meeting me, guys. And yeah, this is called Angular Space TV now. Very fancy. So welcome. Yeah. Oh, sorry, I was missing the comment. I just opened the comment sidebar. Hello everyone. Yeah. If you are not yet aware of what we are gonna do today, is we are going to do a bit of live coding, like real live coding, because believe me, I do not have time to prepare for stuff like that. So I did the very minimum required of me. We're going to explore signal forms in their raw form. We don't have robust documentation yet. We don't have articles. I think if anyone watching knows about any more or less in-depth articles about signal forms, I haven't written one. I would enjoy reading about it. If someone did that groundwork, please let me know. I would share that. Maybe we could even take a look together if there is any like written content about it. But I guess we are quite early. Okay. Um, Yeah, so let me do a quick recap what this all stuff is going to be about. Signal forms, right? So forms have been like this double-edged sword for Angular, right? On one hand, amazing, built-in, lots of capabilities and so on. And you even have a choice, like you could go the engine model way, you could do template-driven forms, or you could do reactive forms if you so prefer. But both of them had their upsides and downsides, and especially with reactive forms, like reactive forms usually. Uh, yeah, Daniel, we need to change the background image for the TV logo. Yeah. Um yeah, so about reactive form, especially, like usually when I do a lot of interviews for different positions, most of them related to Angular, and I like to ask people what do they prefer, like ng model um, or reactive forms. And usually people say reactive forms, and there is this assumption that that is the correct answer. There is no correct answer. In the end of the day, you could write good code with either one. You could easily write bad code with either one. So yeah, but there was this a lot of problems that could arise, especially with reactive forms, with all the subscriptions and all the stuff going on. It was powerful, but it was also painful. Still is, right? And signal forms are like this new thing that is going to unify everything. I think, again, this is not like an official opinion. I'm not from the Angular team. I don't know, but I assume and I think it's a reasonable assumption that at some point in the future, not very close, but at some point, we will only have signal forms. I would personally hope so. Okay. So yeah, let me check. So, how long gonna it take? Well, it's 9 p.m. here, so I hope not longer than like an hour and a half. Reactive forms are always bad. I don't know. With the signals arriving, I switched to template-driven forms in general when I'm not forced to use reactive forms, because with signals and ng model you could achieve the same capabilities much easier, in my opinion, and you don't have to deal with all the signals, especially when you have like link signal and so on. But signal forms, man, is a different beast. So we're going to explore it. Let me let me change this layout a little bit. Every time when I do this live stream, I forget how to change the layout. Wait, I can do stuff like this, you know. Yeah, now the space is back. So now I have to, yeah, share my screen and essentially wait. Window, entire screen. Yeah, I can just share my entire screen, right? Yeah, let's go. So yeah, you can now see what I see during the live streams. So wait, let me show what we are going to do. So I have this very basic setup. I didn't do much preparations, and yeah, what we have here is a login form, and there is also a registration form. Very powerful application. Yeah, there is something like this too, right? And you can see that this was vibe coded with Claude because of all the gradients. I tried to set up a situation where I'm completely new to this. I mean, I did several tweets about Signal Forms, and obviously I did try some things out. But that was like 2 or 3 weeks ago. I don't remember what I did exactly. I just remember the concept. So let's try to go through it together. I am just trying to figure out how to keep track both of the comments and of what you see on your screen. Okay. So yeah, let's go into VS Code and just for a moment try to start from the basics. Let me also kind of like, yeah, increase the code font size a bit. Yeah. So essentially, this is it. This is the login component. Let's close everything else. Let's take a look at what's going on here. So if you are not familiar with Signal Forms, the great power for me for Signal Forms is coming from the situation that you are in is that you just have a signal of your data that is going to be the data that you are, for example, going to submit to the backend or something, right? And then you can just call this form function on that signal and you get a form, okay? So the fun thing here is that when you want to access the form's value, when you want to build something on top of that value, you are just dealing with signals. There is nothing new to learn here. This is more like template-driven forms. Sorry. Oh no, right. I was right. It was more like template-driven forms when you have this kind of like an object or maybe even just a primitive value that you bind to an input with ng model, and then you change it, and it kind of works both way. When you set the value, it updates in the UI, and when the user is typing something, for example, in the UI, it updates the value, right? So this is kind of working like that. In that sense, it's a bit different from reactive forms where you have these APIs where you have to set value and patch value and so on. So this is a big simplification in when comparing to like reactive forms. So, and there is this directive called control where you essentially just, it works like sort of like ng model, but you don't do a two-way binding, or you do a two-way binding. As far as I remember, you don't do a two-way binding. Let's check it out. Here we have a binding with this form.password control, and we have also with email. Okay, let's just, you know what, interpolate this value. Yeah, form.email. Let's see what it shows. Let's go back to the login page. It says object login. Did I need to? What did I do wrong? Wait. Email is. Do I need to see? This is one. This is one of the things that is kind of confusing. Do I need to call this? No, I don't need to call this. Why is this showing like email is a string? So why is it showing an object? Let me check the comment and see if anyone was trying to help me. No. Hi. Wait. So why is this working like this? So if I change something, maybe I did need to do a two-way binding. let me check. No, actually it says email. Let's put a, let's see what this field is. Why is it saying that this is an object? Let's put a JSON pipe and check what it shows. And now it doesn't show anything. Man, this is so confusing. If I do form email, why does it show object? Okay, let's debug this. I'm so stuck. Let's do something like.
That's a bit tricky. To help you debug it, I'll need to see.
You see, my phone somehow thought that I was asking Gemini to fix it for me. I'm not. Let's do an effect, not the form value, but rather, does it have a value? Ah, maybe it has a value. Ah, guys, I'm stupid. I need to do credentials. I was talking about it just before I started to. So yeah, I don't need this. I don't need this. I was talking about how this is different from reactive forms and more in line with what we have in template driven, where you would just work with your object, that is your data. So I just need to output my, credentials.email object or the field inside that signal. And yeah, I was trying to access the value, but when I write something like form.email, I get that reference to the inherent control. We will work with it in a short while, but if we go here and yeah, you can now see this value, and if I change it, yeah, so this kind of works out of the box. It works because it's bound to your signal, and when you update the code, when you update something in the input in the UI, it's reflected automatically immediately in the signal that you are binding with that. And one thing I would also like to center our attention on is that you have like you pass a signal of an object, and this all of these bindings kind of work. So here you don't create separate signals for email, password, and so on. You just create one signal of an object, you pass it to this form function, and it creates the entire form. You have all the controls, all the nested internal like control fields are also bound, and this just works. Okay, that's kind of really big uh, improvement over what you would have in like reactive forms, where you have to define everything, and also kind of an improvement over template driven forms, because in template driven forms, when you want to start working with for example validation and form state, like you want to see if the form is valid or invalid, you would have to use the form directive. You have to do something like store your variable locally or something like this, and then access it elsewhere. But here you have your form separately as a property, and you have your data that is inside your form. So yeah, and here you can access everything you need from the form just using your state property of your component. So here we have like this button is disabled as long as this form is invalid, but we haven't added any validations. Maybe next step we should add some validations, right? But it's super easy in terms of like we just define this and we have everything. We have invalid state, valid state. It says a bunch of stuff. We have like, I don't think this one is showing. Ah, yeah, no, submitting touched and everything. You can see it, a bunch of things. That's valid, invalid. So yeah, if it's invalid, it's disabled. Okay. I need to go back and see any comment. Can you validate the form with signal? Yeah, that's what we have to do. Wait, we have oh, there's a lot of comments I missed. Wait. So how about the dynamic signal form? I mean, the form fields are configured in a JSON or TS file. This TS file will have metadata of the field, like field type validation. Well, If we have time, I will try this out, but my assumption is since you can pass anything to the signal to the form function, why not have something like a computed signal or maybe a call to somewhere which would return you a signal, a dynamic signal that you will then pass on to this form function. But in terms of like adding fields on the fly, I don't know. I haven't tried it, but maybe let's try it. And yeah. Oh, Manfred has a good article. I assume Manfred Steyer. I don't know. I haven't seen that one. Anyone got a link? Let's maybe if I just type Manfred Steyer. I hope yeah. There, Signal Forms. Maybe Google will help me out. All about Angular's new Signal Form. Oh, right. I haven't seen this one. Wait, why does it? I assume this asks me for cookies, but in German. Which one do you click? This one feels less scary. Yeah, right, right. Ah, see? Right here in his example, we have a link signal transformed into a signal form. Yeah, this is great. I assumed this would work. Nice to see a confirmation. Yeah. All right, all right. I will check this article out. I mean, I think I will come to it back to it during the stream, but you also would be kind and check it out. I think it is going to be quite useful. Okay, let's do a bit of validation. We already have a question about like how can we add custom validation. Yeah, we're going to add both custom and built-in validation. So about validation, and this is the part of the Signal Forms that is kind of not confusing at all, but like a bit unusual. It is quite different from what we have both in reactive forms and template-driven forms. In template-driven forms, we use directives to validate, which I personally like, but lots of people find it a bit cumbersome. I don't know. Or maybe the forms are template driven. Okay, everything that works with the forms in that context lives in the template. So in the template you have this input, and on that input you're gonna have a bunch of directives that tell Angular how that input should be validated. And reactive forms, we define controls and we put validation. With signal forms, there is this concept of, man, how do I turn off this auto completions now? I don't care about these AI completions right now. So yeah, here you have something like the context, and this context variable here that we get, this is a completely useless completion. You can add validation, you can add conditional validation, you can enable, disable fields also like conditionally using this context, this form context. This form context is essentially contains all the paths that you have in your form. So this form is very simple. It has like two paths. You have the email field and the password field. But I assume, I haven't tried that complex examples, but I assume if I had something like a nested field where you would have other fields here and so on, something like that, I don't know. Just for example, this would become something like, yeah, password, which has a field value and so on. And you could apply validations using this form paths. Okay, so if we want to say that email is required, for example, we can just use the required function, and okay, let's make them both required. Okay, so you just say this field is required, this field is required using this built-in function, and when you come back, you essentially get it just works. Okay, you have, if I delete this, this becomes disabled now because we had this here. We bound the disabled property of this button to forms valid invalid state, right? And if I remember correctly, here you can do, man, I don't remember a bunch of stuff, but here you can do, I think, conditions. You can do something like when and you can pass a, not a boolean, but a function that returns a boolean or another signal. I guess that's the idea. So maybe a function is not very good in this context, but for example, if I add make required something like signal true, and if I pass this make required field, and maybe I can do, you know, can kind of add a button that makes it required, right? Or stops making it required. Toggles it. That's a good word. Yeah, we have a button that can toggle this make required. Let's see if this works like reactively. I don't remember. Let's just try it out and disable required. So now this is, wait, my screen was refreshed. So if I delete this and this is disabled, yeah, makes sense. And if I click, yeah, this is reactive. This is actually amazing. Like if you have a reactive form, to do something like this, you would have to listen to an event and then subscribe. Well, maybe not subscribe, but essentially, if you are doing a dependency between two fields in reactive forms, you would do something like subscribe to the one that the other depends on, and then you do something like how is it called? You would do as far as I remember, I haven't used reactive forms for a while, something like set validator, yeah, and you would pass in like the required or remove validators. That was a bunch of stuff that we needed to do, right? And this is a big improvement. I would say like a huge improvement in terms of developer experience, because now I can just say, well, I don't need to actually type this. I can just pass the signal, I guess. Yeah, I can just do this. Essentially, like I said, this field is required when this other signal. So if the signal is true, the required validation will work. If it's false, required validation won't work. Absolutely amazing. And this is the sort of mindset that I think the Angular team essentially wants everyone to adopt. When you work with signals, you don't do imperative code. Okay, you don't go somewhere in your code in an unrelated place. For example, you don't write an ng-onIt function and then you go subscribe to this form control, and when it changes, check this and then do this. No, essentially, you want to define everything. You want to declare everything. Declarative code. Okay, I declare this form. I not only declare what fields go into it, but I also declared how these fields can live in the wild, when they can be required, like literally we typed it here, when this is required, when this other signal is true or false or whatever. And if it were a more complex condition, like if it depended on like 5 signals and we had to check if one of them is larger than the other one, some complex, we could just make a computed signal here somewhere and then pass it here. So all of your logic is going to be declarative here. And this is such a big step up. Uh, like huge props to the Angular team for this. Oh. Hi Lars. Glad you also joined this time. Hope you all are going to enjoy this. So yeah, this is about the built-in validations. You have a bunch of stuff that you would expect, right? You have like the min-length validation, the mean validation, right? Everything that you had in essentially like reactive forms, there were these validators, dot required, and so on. All of those fields, right? All those validator functions built in. So how do you do custom validation? So I have a cheat sheet here. Actually, I'm very sorry, but you remember I did post examples. So for example, I had this. Nah, wait. Yeah, let's pass this function validator here. This one was prepared, not really prepared, but Like, yeah, let's add all missing imports. Yeah. I did this one in a tweet. Maybe you have seen this. It was like 2 or 3 weeks ago. So yeah, let's kind of deconstruct how this stuff works. How do we define custom validation? So custom validations, essentially, they just functions that call this validate function. Okay, they take a path from your context here, from like this context.email, like we did, and they do a bunch of stuff on it. Essentially, just pass the path, and then in the callback here, you do your validation. And here you kind of do the same thing that you would do with the custom validations for the reactive forms. Essentially, you just do your computational logic, you find your value, your whatever, and you return an error or you return null when you don't have an error. This just, simple stuff, makes sense. But the fun begins where you can do actually like custom errors and you can pass different kinds of errors. So you can pass this kind field and say, for example, if the error is like too short, you can display another message. You can pass the message here. And this has a lot of flexibility. So essentially, if let's add this password validation. Let's say my field needs to comply with this validation. And for example, after this password input, let's add, no, this is terrible code that is being auto-completed for me. No, I don't need this completion. Honestly, I'm very dumb. I don't know how to turn off completions for a while. Like every time that I turn off the completions, I then have a tough time finding the place where I can turn them back on. So they are. Did someone comment on it? uh, not on my completion suffering, but the cross-field validation disabled read-only SIG. Yeah. I'm going to show it right after this one. And yeah, here we can kind of take the form dot password dot no, we have to, I think, call it. Yeah, it's a signal errors dot, or maybe add the first error, and we can see the kind of error. Let's see what it shows. Let's go back. It says required, and when it is out of field for me, if we so yeah, now the kind of error when I don't have anything is required, and then I have like I type something, it says you have no uppercase letters in here. So if the flexibility here is that you can both provide like a default message, you can just type your message here, right? You can just type your message here and say, okay, if you have this error, you can just use this message. But if somewhere else in your application you need a different message, you don't actually need to display this message. You can just check the kind of the error and display a message accordingly. Okay, so this is mostly about validating one field. This is all fine. And the fun thing with this path thing, which can be a bit confusing, initially for me it was a bit confusing, like what the hell is this path? What do you mean field path? And then I realized that, it's kind of an interesting way of doing this validations, because you essentially can pass any part of your form. If you want the entire form, you can just pass the entire form here. So nothing prevents you from passing this here. Well, it does, because we typed this function that it expects a field path of a string, so a singular control that has a string value, but we could expect a different path here. So it would allow us to pass like subgroups in our form, or maybe, I don't know, these entire forms for validation. So to do a cross-field validation, like, password matching, right? I have a register component here right? We can add a cross-field validation here. Let's see if it works. I also did that in a previous example. So yeah, if I go to here when I had all this bunch of examples, maybe there is password equal validation. Yeah, let's go here. Let's paste it here and just roll with it. So here we take a field path that contains a password field and a confirm password field. So it doesn't care about other fields. It's very type safe, right? So if I go here and let's do this. Let's do passwords equal context. So if I change this password field, let's say I do make a typo, now will have a problem here. So it's really type safe. Well, reactive forms also got type safe, so this is not that big of an upgrade, but still feels very nice to have it. So yeah, essentially here you have like, okay, take this path, which contains these fields. In our case, it's our entire field. And then you take the value, do your logic, like comparison of equality in our case, and then you return an error or you return null. The same logic, we just take different path that has the fields and then we work with it. So yeah, if we add, we already have this form invalid. Let's check the register field, register page. Yeah, we have password should not be matching. Yeah, they are not matching now. If I type something like 1234, that's not my real password. Now it's matching. If I type 7, now it's not matching. And yeah, yet again, it all works out of the box, kind of. You just write your logic. And the fun thing about this is that outside of validations, you can also do this other bunch of stuff. Like you can add disabled state on your controls. So you just do, for example, disabled. Here I have, let me just format this a little bit. So here we have like this age field. I don't know, this is something that was byte coded. So I can say disable the age field and it's disabled. No, not that. I told you that's not my real password. So yeah, this age field is disabled and it also accepts this when parameter, right? Oh, does it? Oh no. So how did we? I remember doing this previously. It definitely existed, but maybe it was a wait. Let me. No, I deleted it. Let me check if I did it. It definitely worked like a. If you do, let's just click here and try to figure out stuff from the TypeScript declaration. So where does it start? Going for a logic function. Logic? It's called logic? Ah, wait. So the first parameter is a path and the second parameter is logic string or no, for logic. Well, logic function is, maybe we just need to pass a boolean or something. Not a boolean, just like a signal. Yeah, this kind of makes sense. Although this doesn't look the same as it was with the, for example, required validation where with this object. Although this maybe doesn't accept any other parameters. I assume this is what it means. So let me just do let's create some disabled condition signal true, and let's just pass it here. Disabled condition, yeah. And let's see if it is disabled, yes. And if I switch it to false, maybe it will stop being disabled, I assume. Yeah. So I'm not gonna check if it's reactive or not. It's obviously going to be reactive. So yeah, this is kind of great, great. We can do a bunch of stuff with this. I don't know if there's something for the read-only situation, because read-only is different from disabled. By the way, everyone, if you didn't know, they're not the same thing. Does it have like a read-only field? Yeah, it has a read-only field. You can do read-only here and maybe change it to true. And yeah, this is read-only. Yeah, you can even see this kind of different from being disabled. So yeah, everything is reactive. Very nice. Let me check the comments again. Now, reactive form validation is untyped, so there is no type safety like this. Oh, really? That's kind of a bummer. Interesting. Why do I kind of recall that it was type safe, or it was just the form fields, their exact values, but not the logic in validation. Okay. Uh, I also code, but seeing your Armenian name is what made me click the video. Yeah, small world. Yeah, everyone, every if there are like two Armenians in any situations that they can bump into each other, they do bump into each other. So, hey, welcome. So yeah, let's do async validation next. I don't know. I already did it one time, so that's gonna be another copy paste, but that will be the last copy paste. So. Maybe yeah, we can try to do the async validation. Let's add some async validation on the email field. Let's say we have we have. I did this example where I use this mythical user service, which isn't a real service, but we will treat it as if it was a real service. Let's just close this template. Let's just close this one. And yeah, let's go through this again. Okay, so what did I do for this? Missing imports. Yeah, this is going to work. This is going to work, and it was quite painful for me. I assume there is a bunch of ways of doing async validation, okay, with Signal Forms. One of the ways which I saw when I did this import was that you have like something like validate HTTP, okay, and with validate HTTP you have to pass like a HTTP resource, okay, and I couldn't really use that because I wasn't really making an HTTP call here for just that example, right? So if we have some sort of service here that has a method that returns an observable of a Boolean, we can just fake it, okay? So here we have this service, it's unimportant, but it has this easy mail taken property. And now we have this unique email sort of fake validator. You probably saw this because I posted this in a tweet again. And what you have to do, and this part was really hard for me. What you have to do, you have to call this function, and then you have to pass it this object that will kind of help you construct a resource, okay, an RX resource or a simple resource, or maybe, well, not really HTTP resource, because for HTTP resource you will do validate HTTP. So here what you have to provide is the params callback, which is essentially kind of the same thing that you will have here, but this in this place you use it to extract the value of the field that you want to validate. Okay, so here you will go something like, okay, take the value out of this field, because it might not be that field, you might go deeper or whatever. We extract the value of the email field, we assume that's the one that we will get, and then wrap it in an object, and then we pass it here, we pick up our service, and here it's more understandable. But this is the important part, very confusing. We have this params object, which is a signal, And it makes sense because you might have multiple of these values. So if any of them changes, you need one signal to read and to understand which one changed. And then you pass it here to make sure that this Rx resource is updating every time when your email is updating or whatever field you are validating, right? And then everything else is kind of understandable. You have this stream function that just, usual creation of an Rx resource. Okay, make this HTTP call, whatever result you get. And I guess it's important for it to be a Boolean in this case, although I don't know. I don't know. What if I change this to be like return of a string, right? Let's say it just returns a string. Da, da, da. Well, yeah, it will. Well, this logic will still kind of work because we can do this conditional, but so it's not important if, let's say, if email equals Armen Vardanyan 5gmail.com. Yes, that's my Gmail address. You can send me spam messages. So yeah, if we go here and just apply this validation on the email, unique email, context.email. Yeah, if we check it now, let's see. So this should be invalid, I guess, but yeah, it's invalid now. What if I do this address? Doesn't it work? Maybe I need to, maybe I made something else required. Maybe just let us show all the error messages. Let's do something like form email. Nah, not like this. Like this. This is another confusing part. I will complain about it a bit later. Earth. Listen, let's see if we get anything useful. I don't see any errors. Well, technically I don't have any errors, but now I do. And what did I miss? What did I miss? Maybe someone is talking to me in the comments. Michael says, you can be tested if you do combine latest of each field's value observable, but not in a validator function. Ah, okay. Makes sense. Yeah, whatever. I'm not doing reactive forms anyway. And I guess a lot of people who joined today also don't use reactive forms exactly. So maybe it's all right. But with signal forms, but why didn't my validation work? Why didn't my async validation work? Email. What did we do wrong? Nothing. Well, one thing I can tell you is that async validations in this setup with signal forms only work after they only work after the synchronous validations pass. That I assume that refers to the other field, to the same field. So on this email field, I don't have any other validations. Let's just close these other validations and just let's see if it changes anything. No, no. So this is obviously not equal. Why is it not working? This is the sort of example that I suffered on a lot when I was trying to devise it, and I assumed it's going to work as soon as I'm doing the live stream is not working. You know, Murphy's law or something. How's it called? Yeah. Form email.errors. Is it even a real thing? What is it saying? Ah, I even needed to call it. Or maybe I did call it. I don't know. Let's check. Okay. So now we have something. But all right, all right, I just messed up the logic in my service, but it doesn't matter. Should have been, yeah, not equal. Well, in this case, because should not be equal to this because it's a taken email. Yeah, I messed that one up, but yeah. So if we refresh, yeah, this says, no, it shouldn't say that it's taken. Wait, let's refresh it. Wait. Ah, no, I did it correct the first time. Wow. This is okay, and it was working okay. Of course, this is the error state. Sorry, I messed it up. But this is a cautionary tale because you are going to be messing stuff up a lot with all of this. Do I call it or not call it? For example, here, if I want to read this invalid field, it is also a signal. Again, makes sense that it is a signal, but to read it, I need to call this form signal, read it, and then I need to also call this. But when I want to access email, a control of the form, I don't need to call it. I cannot do this. This is wrong. It says it doesn't have. So it's not, if you think about it, it's not bad design at all, because like if you are referring to the form itself, to its own valid state, touch state, whatever, you call that signal, you get that value, and you work with whatever you need to work with. And if you need one of the child fields, you don't call it, you call the child field, and then you work with it. I assume if, for example, email was something like, let's just check. Let's say on this form I add something like address, right? A nested form group, something like country and maybe city. Okay. If I wanted to check the address field, the city field on this address, I probably won't have to. Yeah, here I have like city, and yeah, I can also read the value here, though I don't need to. I could do, how's it called? We can do like credentials dot, but yeah, if I put some value here, hi, although hi is not a country, let's put Armenia, right? And yeah, I can read the value like this. Did it refresh or not? Should have been showing something, right? This was right before the create account, but it's not showing. Wow. Maybe it didn't actually. No, we have a warning about the JSON pipe, but I don't think that's the one that's messing our code up, right? Sorry. Yeah, yes. We're not seeing that value. And it has a value. Has a value, says Armenia right here. But if I do, wait, let's do credentials, address, city, right? Let's just read the value directly from the signal. It's not working. Now this is interesting. We have a signal that has an object inside of it, and that object has a nested object, and somehow we're not able to read that value. But we kind of are, right? We're not getting an error or anything. And I'm just reading the signal, so the signal should be, we should be seeing this value. Or maybe I have no actual idea how to do nested form. Maybe let's read Manfred's article. Question mark maybe. You mean like the Elvis operator? No, I don't think that's the problem. We would be getting an error. Although, to be honest, I'm not checking my console. But no, we're not getting an error, which makes sense. So, are you using signals? Yeah. I think if you're referring to the very current example, I am trying to access the form value directly from the signal and it's not working. Let's open Manfred's article and type nested forms and form groups. Schema, yeah. Yeah, but nested forms and form arrays. Schema. Where is the schema coming from? Well, we have already seen these examples, but from so far we only want the flight object to form. However, signal forms will support more complex structure tools. This assigned an aircraft and several prices to the flight. The first scheme for the aircraft. Yeah, but how do I kind of make it work with a? Yeah, I want to see what my signal has to look like. Okay. If I have a nested field. So yeah, when we do initially, like, yeah, sure, we have this signal and we essentially did more or less everything that we needed to do in the same way. But what if I have a nested signal? Not a nested signal, like essentially just a nested value. Manfred's article on the Angular CLI MCP examples are what I go to when I have questions on it myself. Yeah, makes sense. This is a very good article, way better than the live stream that I'm doing right now. Definitely go read it in more detail after this live stream ends. But I still haven't figured out how to make the individual components clear. So for this schema, what is schema doing here is that we can define like form shapes and validations and kind of attach them to the stuff that we are doing in a form. Let's see the very first instance where a schema is being used. Form is a schema with validation rules. Yeah. Still haven't figured out how this nested form example worked. Not even the nested form. Wait, I have a signal, right? And inside that signal, I have an object, and I have another property inside that object. What if I remove this for a moment? Now I can just remove this for a moment. What could be the issue here? So my assumption is that when I pass this credential signal to the form, something is being worked on by Angular in regards to the signal. So maybe that's why I'm not seeing some of my fields or any of my fields. What if I tried, let's forget about this for a moment. What if I tried like the full name field, and here let's put something to make sure that that our signal at least works as expected. Yeah, so full name works, but address doesn't. If I do address here, let's see if it shows in any capacity. It says object, so it is an object. So what if we do JSON pipe and what do you mean no pipe found? Ah, yeah. Yeah, wait. Ah, it's 10 p.m. Don't judge me. I knew it was gonna be a dumb mistake. It was, I was, man, this is so disappointing. I was doing like, I needed to do country and not city. Yeah, of course, yeah. Country, Armenia, it says it. Yeah. Man. Oh yeah, all right. So yeah, for the nested form, essentially, I guess it is going to work. Let's just, if we add like an input here and say control equals form dot address dot city, it's going to work, right? Not city. I typed city again. And yeah, well, form, yeah, it just nested form just work out of the box. Yeah, you're right that my mistake was about city, but yeah, you see, if you're looking at the top comment right now, it was about the address situation. It was about, oh, maybe we need to call those signals. No, we don't. In this case, we don't. And you can see how it is kind of makes sense why it works that way, but is confusing, is a bit confusing. At some point, you will gonna start doubting yourself. Do I need to call this, or do I need to call this other field? I don't know. It's a bit hard. Yeah, it's a bit hard, but I guess you will get used to it. So yeah, for now we have done like async validation. We have done a small nested field. And actually, we did a plain field like custom validation. And by the way, another way that this is powerful is that because you like think about it, if you are doing, for example, this async validation, essentially you are writing a function. This is a function that you wrote and that you are going to call, right? So obviously you have to pass this path field and so on. That makes sense. Without it, you won't know what field you are validating or how or whatever. That makes sense. But you can add more arguments here, right? For example, I can add like a condition, for example, a signal of a Boolean, right? And maybe make this not required. And maybe I actually don't even need to type like signal of a Boolean. Maybe I can do something like Boolean and maybe even assign a default value. This looks ugly. Yeah, I don't need to do this. I'm not that big of an expert in TypeScript. If I do just this, will it correctly infer the type, or yeah, it infers that it's a Boolean. Yeah. So yeah, I can do something like you can pass a condition, and I guess you could do a signal here, and then you essentially you can just check. okay, you can check if the condition has changed, and based on that you can revalidate maybe or something. You essentially you can pass a condition of when to do a check. So it's very flexible, and again you can define everything that you need from your form exactly where you are defining your form in general. So no need to write stuff like subscribing to anything or whatever. And the fun thing is, if you absolutely have to do quote unquote subscription, like for example, if the user typed an email, it's not a validation, we need to make another HTTP call or whatever, you have a signal, you just write an effect. Okay. Which brings me to a question, will that effect work if I changed a nested field? I don't know. I assume it would. I assume it would. That would make all the sense. I haven't tried it. Let's do log country. I like writing my effects this way. If you don't like it, please forgive me. I assign it to a property on the class. And let's do console log, for example, this dot credentials dot address dot country, right? So yeah, initially it will work. We have Armenia here. Maybe we can try this and see how it works. Let's open the console. Yeah, Wait, I actually didn't get a console log initially. No, I didn't. Really? Why not? I mean, it's an effect. At least one time it had to run. Did we do anything wrong? Well, this should be simpler because we're just directly working with the. What if we do just this? It's an effect, the correct effect, right? Yeah. Maybe I, for a moment, thought maybe there was another function called effect. But it should work, right? Ah, it was logging in a different place? Well, what is this design? Yeah. So what if we do, yeah, okay. Address dot country this time. Let's not make the same mistake. Okay, Armenia, and let's do Poland. Yeah, it works. It absolutely works. So yeah, you essentially, from the top of my head, I haven't read like the internal code, but essentially when you bind your form that is based on this signal to a field, whenever you change that field, essentially your entire signal kind of emits a new value. So you can write an effect just as usual, and if someone changes the password, the user, your effects will work, your computed properties will work. I could do like something like full address computed, and do something like like this, credentials dot address dot country, and get credentials dot address dot city, right? And maybe we can just use the something like the full address here, right? Full address. Let's see. Let's see. What? Ah, right. Does anyone have a counter on like how many times we forgot to call a signal on this live stream, because it's definitely more than 10 at this point. But yeah, like it works Armenia, and we haven't put any city there, but we could do. You can change also that just to visualize. Man, typing atrociously today. Yeah, yeah. We can just do computer signals, and if you change it in some way, like England, yeah, kind of works. So yeah, that's a big plus. I haven't thought about it before the stream, and now I think that it's kind of great. So whatever you expect from your signal, when you create a form based on it and then bind it to inputs, it kind of just works. Okay, it works in a way that you would expect it to work. I haven't yet encountered any like bad surprises that I would think that, oh man, I didn't like this, I didn't understand why that worked that way. So yeah. Any ideas for what I should do next? My brain is not working that great right now. Maybe, well, we did async validations, we did. Maybe we can try well, if I try the validate HTTP function, I then need to invent some URL to which I would need to make an HTTP call. By the way, here's a question to the audience. If I'm trying to mock an HTTP resource, how do I go about it? Like it literally expects a URL. If I hardcode the URL into the HTTP resource code, that would kind of, well, it goes through the HTTP client. So I guess I would have to do some mocking on the HTTP client, whatever. We could do, for the purposes of like demo, we could do an interceptor that would pick up on something and then return a value, but I'm too lazy to do that right now. Maybe we can. Well, how about we try to. Well, it would be easy. What I'm interested in, maybe what we haven't actually explored in detail, is that can I, for example, disable a field if another field works in a certain way? For example, has a different value. For example, let's write, this is just a stupid example just to check that out. Let's say if the user types, for example, Q in the email field, if it's only the letter Q, let's then disable this country control. Okay, we can do disabled, let's try it, text.address.country when, okay, let's see, text.address. No, not address, email.value, or maybe, no, we cannot call it, we can, what can we do about it? Value? This is how we read it, right? Or not? We had email here, right? Why that doesn't exist? How did we do it in the validators? See, that's this sort of bureaucracy I always forget. Text.value. Wait, it has a value signal. It should have. For example, in unique email, we take the value field. Maybe the value field is not a signal, and I don't know. It's so confusing. So what is it? Wait, so here exactly, we pass this email path to the unique email validator, right? And here this field path has a value, right? We pass this path then to this validate async function. Here it has a value, but here it doesn't. TTX is like field path. So what is the CTX email is just, I cannot read the value of it. I don't like it. What if I do, let's say, let's do a bit of unconventional maybe. Let's do this dot credentials dot email. No, sorry. That's email equals Q. Let's try this. Let's see what happens. Oh man, lots of new comments. Before we try it, let's check the comments. With validate HTTP, you could just make a promise with some RNG for a sentence. RNG. What does RNG mean? And now this is a good question. What about the value changes? You don't need value changes. You don't need. You have a signal, and if you need, there are two scenarios. Either you have another value that depends on your form value, then you can just do compute it. You can do even linked signal if that other value is kind of independent. Or you need to just do a side effect, and then you will just do a effect. You can just do an effect. So you don't need value changes field on your form. You don't need it. You have your form value as a signal. You can do anything that you would normally do with a signal. You can convert it to an observable. You can make an effect on it. You can create another resource based on it. I don't know. Da, da, da. Yeah, right. I could do that. I could use just some placeholder APIs. How to listen to controls like status change or something else. Oh, that's a nice one. I don't know. But I assume that status changes kind of we have. Let me check. Let me just outright try it. Log form status. And just let's make another effect. Let's see what fields does our form provide in terms of, for example, log this dot form dot. Does it have a status field? It doesn't have a status field. Interesting, but it has. Da, da, da. Does it have a? Well, it has the invalid field or valid field. So I assume these are signals. I mean, they look like that. A signal indicating the field value is currently valid. Yeah, we have the explanation here. So yeah, essentially, if you want a status change on a control, well, the form, as far as I see, doesn't have a status field. Okay, but it, if you refer to like touched, and yeah, it has a touched signal and it has a valid and invalid signals. So these are signals. If you write an effect, it will just track it. So if you need to do something when a field becomes valid, you can just write an effect. If it's a side effect, if it's something not related to your form, right? But in terms of like, we were trying this, maybe this is working. I hope this is working. Let's try it out. But if this is working, for example, this was working, we could pass another signal. If you have another signal, you can just do it inside the form. You can pass a condition to your read-only validation. You can pass a condition to the disabled validation and so on. You can just do it here. If you want to do a side effect based on the status change, so like the validation change or maybe the touched property of the form, you can just write an effect. If you want to derive a new value, you can just try to compute it, or maybe a link signal. I don't know if a link signal of a form status will make any sense, but well, technically you can do it. So let's go back and check now. Now we have two things that we need to check. Yeah, essentially, yeah, all states should be accessible via some signals. Yeah. We have signals for essentially everything. But it was a bit confusing for me that we didn't have a status signal. I don't know. Maybe they will add it. No idea. It's still like not in a final form anyway. Well, let's check. We have now a signal that says true, false because of the validation. And yeah, I changed something that would make this other field which field. I assume the country field will become disabled if I type the letter Q in the email address field. So let's just do that. It works. It works. It absolutely works. This is amazing. This is actually amazing. I'm being very honest with you. Okay. What we did here, I'm not even sure that this is like the correct, or maybe not. Well, this works. It is a correct way, but maybe like the desired way. Maybe actually something in this context would allow me to maybe do this in a simpler way. But this works in a reactive way. This works in a reactive way. And implications of this are massive. Like, think about it. Uh, you have a big app with permissions. You have a form field where some fields need to be disabled if the user doesn't have certain permissions. Would have been a mess, okay? Would have been a mess with reactive forms. You would need to, let's talk like worst case scenario. You would have to make the HTTP call and like subscribe to it, and inside of it you would have to say, okay, take this control and make it disabled if this condition, make it enabled, otherwise blah blah blah. You know, if you have done it, some part of your body is hurting right now if you did stuff like that previously. Now you can just essentially write a resource. Okay, let's just do it. Just for the sake of example, we could say can edit country, right? And it's an Rx resource. I'm not even going to write a service or whatever for it. I can just do stream, and here I can do true, can edit country true. Okay, so I have this can edit country uh, resource, right? So instead of this, we would just have an HTTP call or whatever. And here I can just go this can edit country and, and yeah, it's a resource, so we need to call the value, and it will say a bunch of things because it can have. Do resources now support like default values? I don't remember. Yeah, default value false. All right. So yeah, and here we can just do this. We can essentially just pass it on, right? Just let's do this. Let's do this. And now is disabled. Well, it's disabled in a kind of a wrong way because I named it candidate country, but here I passed it as is, so it is disabled when it is true. But we can go back and just do like this. Yeah, if cannot edit country, then yeah. So now we can edit it, and this is actually amazing. This solves so many problems, and it is kind of so easy to integrate, so easy to migrate. You just put away all of the code that you had previously. You just create this object in a signal, and then you can easily apply whatever you want. This is all reactive. You don't need anything else. This is my takeaway. I haven't, this new stuff, I haven't tried it out. I haven't tried like passing resources around and so on. Rather than form control status as we know it as valid, invalid, pending, disabled, each is a separate signal. Correct me if I'm wrong, but if I remember, status is kind of a new thing, no? Or was it like, oh, it was, yeah, right. Reactive Forms had this one other field that has the status which contained valid, invalid, pending, disabled. And pending, you can kind of think about it as async validation maybe is going on. So yeah, it makes sense. Makes sense. Yeah, we probably don't need a status. That's not a very big deal, even if they don't add it, I guess. Because let's be honest, when do we need to take a look at the entirety of this status. Usually we care if it is valid or invalid or disabled in different contexts. I have a hard time imagining a context where I kind of have to refer to all of the states of this status field, like a function that kind of checks if it's disabled and does something, or maybe it's pending and it does something. Just doesn't make sense to me in general. So yeah, we did also this example. We now know that we can easily enable disabled fields based on resources. Yeah, yeah. Man, we have been here for an hour and 21 minutes, and we have managed to cover a bunch of examples. I want to know if there are any other cases. People, I'm listening to you. Uh, you know what? Let me unshare my screen for a moment so that I can go on Twitter and pin the uh, the live stream on my page because that usually works for engagement. uh, Status having all that made sense when forms only had two observables, value and status, but since V18's granular event, it isn't as necessary. And with signal forms, definitely no reason to cram into status. Yeah, I absolutely agree. Absolutely agree. Could we listen multiple control signals at the same time? I mean, for example, city and address at the same time. Yeah, essentially, when you, that's a good point. Actually, the question that we need to ask is the reverse. When we have one signal, a signal of our entire object, of our entire form, the value that we have, right, that we define initially. And when we write an effect, we call that signal, we read that signal. That's what prompts the effect to understand that it needs to work this function whenever the form value changes. Now, now we need to ask the reverse question. I will actually now try it. We need to ask the question: if I write an effect to listen to the change of this country field, for example, do I need to include any checks to prevent it from working when other fields have changed? And that might be a problem. That actually might be a problem. I don't know. I don't know. Well, let's check it out. Let's check it out, and let me reshare my screen. Screen. Let's go here. Right, we added an effect right here. We had something that logged the let's hide this other effect. We had logging of the, no, this is a computed, we had an effect somewhere, right? Maybe I deleted it or changed it. Okay, let's change this one to like log full address, and also log this. And this is essentially depending on this credentials observable. I assume this is going to work in instances when it probably shouldn't. I don't know. Let's check. This full address, right? Let's go. And now full address Armenia Yerevan. So now I'm changing Armenia to like Poland. It works. It logs here, right? It's fine for now. But what if I change the age? Wait, it doesn't work? Ah, this is so nice. I keep discovering more and more nice things about about Signal Forms. Really incredible piece of technology. So my thinking was that because I'm depending on this credential signal and something has changed inside of it because of the binding, right? I changed the age, right? Not related to the country field. I changed the age property and somehow reading these other fields didn't produce. My brain doesn't work. I don't understand how this is possible, to be honest. I am reading this signal here, right? I am reading the credential signal. Doesn't matter that I'm accessing these other properties. These are not signals. Maybe someone can explain this to me. Maybe I did something wrong. So if I change the age, it doesn't. But if I, no man, this somehow works. Yeah, when I change the, wow, I honestly do not understand. Michael, if you are still listening, you are way smarter than I am. Please write a comment. So as far as you can see, doesn't really matter. The answer to your question is yes, you can listen to multiple control signals. We do listen to multiple control signals. Here we listen to address and city. Let's also add an input that kind of works with the city, right? Input control city, right? Let's check. Let's check. We are now form.address.city. Let's see how it works. Da, da, da. Armenia, Yerevan. Yeah, we have this. Let's refresh the page. Armenia, Yerevan. So our full address, it works. And when I do some changes here, like I add my street name, it works. Okay. And if I change something else, for example, I change my name, the effect doesn't work, which is the desired behavior, but I don't understand how it works. Yeah, if I change anything else, my effect is not being triggered somehow. No idea. No idea how that works. But if I did like, let's add another effect. You know, these are like exotic things. Maybe you won't need this stuff every day, but it's kind of reassuring to see how intuitive all of this is. Other than all the, you know, calling, not calling, all this parentheses or no parentheses, it could be confusing. But let's say log full name. Let's do an effect that just logs the credentials dot full name. Okay, let's have another effect that does this one. So we have Armen Vardanyan, the full name and the address. And if I change the full name, only this effect works, right? If I change it back, only this one works. And if I change the address, but wait, the other effect is working. This got me confusing, really. I don't know how it works. And maybe I'm not able to kind of. Oh, why is the screen sharing is so small? Yeah, because I messed up a little bit. Let me fix it. Wait, I could do maximize this, and now you cannot see me. But maybe that's not very important. Sorry, it used to be all right before I switched. I think it means signal values from individual controls. The full address value doesn't trigger the effect because the resulting string stayed the same if you just change other field. Yeah, but maybe that's the, yeah, that's a great point. Actually, it was the computed field that got us. Yeah. That makes sense. Computed played a nasty joke on us. If we use, I think if we use it directly, like if we do if we do credentials dot no, not here. Here, if we do credentials dot address dot country. Yes, sorry. I got a bit too excited about this. Yeah, really good point. I think Armen needs to tap into the deep signals. Man, I'm not able to tap into anything anymore. I think I'm gonna finish the stream soon. Isn't that the reason we got projected signal and structural signal? Wait, we got projected signal and structural signal? Because this sounds like news to me. I remember we got something called deep signal, but we didn't really get it. It was internal, right? So instead of calling credentials, drill down to the nested values. Right. Yeah. Great. If we want to log, like, we don't need to touch this. We don't need to touch this. We need to go something like this dot form dot address dot city dot city dot value. Do we need to call this? Maybe we need to call this. Let's do this. And yeah, that's a great suggestion actually. Now we have Armen Vardanyan and Yerevan. Yeah, we're logging only the city, right? And if I change it, it works. But it also logs this other field, although yeah, because here we are also doing the we don't need not let's update our initial advice. Don't use the original signal at all. Drill to your properties that you actually need. We can do this dot form dot what was it? Full name. Oh no, wait, we already have full name here. Dot value. Yeah, and if we we can just use this. Now let's clean it. Okay, if I change it, wait, why is it still on full name dot value? Technically, this shouldn't be happening. Let's read the comments. Wait. As far as I know, cases when we are formed with six fields and need to listen only to two ones. Yeah. That's what we're trying to accomplish here and failing. No, from the form condition will trigger every time. Yeah, I agree, but somehow I changed the code and it still doesn't work. Let's refresh it for good conscience. And no, it still logs them both. It shouldn't. I haven't changed the. Okay, let's go a bit nuclear. Let's delete everything that is kind of irrelevant. Full address, full name, full whatever. Okay, we have two effects. One is going through the form to this city kind of field and takes its value. And the other one goes to the full name and takes its value. So I assume these are two different signals that won't change. They are not in the same nested form, right? So, why would this be happening? Maybe I don't need to call this one. No, I cannot. I have to call this one. Maybe I. No, I think we did fine, but it still kind of confuses me. Okay, if I change the full name, I kind of get a double log, but I shouldn't be getting a double log. Why am I getting a double log? I should get only one. Guys in the comments, apparently you were wrong. Or maybe I am wrong in implementing what you had in your mind because okay, let's figure this one out and then end the stream. Because I really want to get this fixed. This is an important question. Wait, what could be wrong? Well, we don't log the entire form. We don't actually even touch this credentials signal. So this is whatever. We read the drill to that signal of this like city, and then we take its value. And then we do the same with the full name. These are kind of like different signals, right? They are part of the same structure, but the whole idea of having them as different signals is like granular control, right? Granular, it's a hard word. And it doesn't seem to work as I expected to work. Let's change city first and then name. Well, will that help? I mean, we can try. No harm in that. Let's see. Doesn't look reassuring. Actually, let's change another field. You know what? It still works. It still works. Okay, I'm gonna go mad and maybe rerun. Let's see. Nope. If you add another effect to log a different field, is it logged as well? Yeah, that's what we are seeing right now, essentially. I mean, let's disable this one log. Let's only leave the address, right? And try changing a different field. Still logging. Still logging. I'm changing the age, but yeah, this isn't working the way I expected it to work. I don't know why. What if I log only, but no, I need to log the value. For example, I need the value and that's kind of weird. Maybe there is a way to access it. I just don't see it. Do I have any other effects here that are maybe like tripping me up? Effect. 1, 2, 3. No, this is commented. No, we are only touching this, but essentially a change anywhere in the form triggers this effect. And this is not something that I find desirable. I mean, in general, we can just say, yeah, you know what, guys, don't write effects. Is it because address is an object nested structure, so if also another value change is copied? I don't know. Could be. But if that is the case, if I did only log full name, we can easily check it. Then this full name shouldn't be logged when we change anything else essentially. So we get a log full of the full name one time, another time. No, we continue getting this log of the full name, although we kind of drilled down to we didn't use these credentials. We didn't even call the form, but kind of like subscribing or however we're calling it to the full name is essentially kind of like a subscription to the entire form. But that is not what we want, right? Okay, if no one has an idea of what is going on, maybe we can just end the stream. But if you have questions, you can continue posting them. It's just I got very tired after this. Do we have any ideas about this last problem? If you make a compute it with it, it should be as expected. Why couldn't the underlying signal forms code make a computed from it? I mean, I even kind of assume it's a computed. I don't know. Well, yeah, I guess if I did a compute it from this, it would work. How would it work? Yeah, it would work in terms of like we would recheck if it has changed from the last time and wouldn't have emitted. So yeah, this is. Don't get me wrong. This is an easily circumventable problem, but um, I kind of assumed it would like work out of the box. I think we need to deep dive into the source code. Maybe that's the default behavior. Yeah, I guess that's a real possibility, but I would gladly do that if we had more time, because I think the control itself is recreated. To be honest, I kind of doubt it. Why would it be recreated? Recreated each time when something else changed? That would be terribly inefficient, I guess. Okay, guys, it's really enough for today. Let's kind of recap. If you liked torturing me live, I will gladly do another one, not only on Signal Forms or whatever. We can do anything. We can try to live code a bunch of stuff. So if you like this format, please let me know, because finding guests every week is a bit challenging. Sometimes I will be alone. Sometimes there won't be a live stream. That's life. But if you liked it, if it was interesting, please let me know so I can figure out if I will do it again or not. And maybe next time we will dive deeper into the source code, because that's a good suggestion actually. It's just that I think we're a bit out of time right now. So yeah. Also, I would like to do a promotion of myself, because I started writing articles about AI. So if you hate AI, you can turn it off right now. I also used to kind of hate AI, but when you work with it, you discover that it is at least on some level fascinating. And if you're I assume that you are familiar with Angular if you are watching this live stream. So if you also want to get familiar with AI, especially with like Gemini APIs, I wrote an article. If you haven't seen it, you can check out on LinkedIn or on Twitter. I have it on my pages there. It's like an entry level introduction, okay? Uh, if you don't know anything about how to work with LLM APIs and you come from an Angular background, that's a good point to start. You can read it. The next part is coming hopefully next week. The second part would be more challenging, more suitable for people who are already familiar with LLM APIs, especially with Gemini APIs. Okay, so yeah, that's kind of if that's kind of it for today. I think we covered a lot of stuff. We covered creating signal forms and validations and custom validations, async validations, and conditional like disabling, enablings of forms. Very impressive, very nice. I learned a bunch of things today, which I'm still gonna forget in like 2 3 days, because it's not like we're using signal forms in production or whatever right now. But really, really big expectation. Probably one of the biggest things that I have been looking forward, like in all times in Angular. Maybe standalone was the previous big one. One might argue that maybe also like control flow, but I think this one is the one that will really really improve your code quality, not just in some isolated chunks. Like for example, yeah, it's nice that instead of ngEf or ng4 we write if and for. It's nice, but it's not that big. And in terms of standalone, it's more like, oh, it's great that we got to delete a bunch of files with ng modules. That's great. But the actual working business logic code, now with Signal Forms, it is going to be revolutionized. So, yeah. Thank you everyone for attending. Thanks to the Angular team for bringing this amazing technology to us. Looking forward for the stable release. Looking forward to actually trying it out in real projects. And thank you, Manfred, for writing your article. If anyone has missed it, like me, we referenced it a lot. Please go and read it. It's called All About Angular's New Signals. I will also tweet about it and make sure to tag him. Thanks, everyone, and see you on the next one.